John mentioned a lot about dreams and reimagining the future, and that was a wonderful segue. It wasn't a plan at all. But to our next fantastic speaker, Laura Costello, who's head of Sustainability and Planet Services, which is a division or team I would love to work for, to be honest with you, at Thinkhouse, to talk about that good life and what it means. So please welcome to the stage, Laura Costello.
Great. I can see familiar faces. Hello, everyone. It's lovely to be here. And I would appreciate lots of hush from the bar because my dad is in the audience, so he'll be very impressed. And my bosses, two of my beautiful bosses. So, yes, please help me impress them. As Tom said, I work in Thinkhouse, which is a youth marketing company, and we're a B Corp. I work with Purpose Disruptors, which is a not-for-profit looking to transform the marketing and advertising industry. And I'm going to talk to you about a project we worked on called Good Life 2030, supported by Creative Ireland. Yes, I work in advertising. There's lots of logos. I'm going to talk a little bit about dreaming. As Tom said, a great segue from John. How do we get an industry, a business industry, to dream differently? And I guess what we started to do was to get people to start closing their eyes and having very different conversations about what we were trying to achieve with our work. So I'm going to start with a little experiment and get you all to dream a little bit before I tell you about our dreams. So if you haven't got 2 feet on the ground, please put 2 feet on the ground. And this is inspired by the little cartoon Calvin Hobbes. And Calvin turns around to Hobbes and says, if people sat outside and looked at the stars each night, I bet they'd live a lot differently. So take a very deep breath. Hear that lovely silence now. And I invite you to close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing it. And think of a time when you were really, really happy. What are you doing? Where are you? Who are you with? What can you see or hear, smell or taste? How does it feel? Spend just one more moment there. Okay. Now I'll invite you to open your eyes again. Show of hands, who was in a shopping centre? Anyone? I don't see any hands. Was anyone at work? No? Sometimes there's a few people at work. Anyone on Zoom? Anyone in nature? Oh, look at that. Through the whole room. We're in a climate bubble here. Anyone with someone important in your life? With family, friends, a partner. Anyone doing something that you love, dancing in the kitchen, running, reading, yoga, gardening? So yeah, when we ask people to do this, generally a good life, or the things that make us happy, are spending time doing the things we love to do, the things that give us meaning, and oftentimes it's really about connection. And the reason that we do this is because to change our relationship with the physical world, as Rebecca Solnit says, to end an era of reckless consumption by the few that has consequences for the many, means changing how we think about pretty much everything. Wealth, power, joy, time, space, nature, value, and what constitutes a good life. And as I said, with the logos, I work in marketing and advertising. And we paint a picture of a good life. We're architects of desire. And our work impacts into everybody's picture of a good life every day, It's said that our work appears up to 3,000 times a day for people. And at the moment, our story of a good life is one of more. It's more wealth, more power, more material abundance. This is an old car ad putting a price tag on happiness. And this story is taking us in the opposite direction to where we need to go. It can't be sustained with our Earth's resources. This is from Christiana Figueres and Tom Carnett. Consumerism is the prevailing definition of a good life. So how do we change that? Because yes, it can't be sustained. Currently, the better we do our jobs, the worse it is for the planet if you work in marketing and advertising, generally. I mean, that's the truth. We need to do less harm and we need to do more good. And this is just a note on the less harm, because I'm going to talk today about the more good, because that's the dreamy part. But there is a lot of work being done around the less harm, and it was touched on earlier around, do we need to advertise SUVs as part of the good life? Do we need to advertise flying and fossil fuels and support that with industry? So there's lots of work being done to challenge that. But when it comes to the good stuff, we still are facing challenges. We haven't been very imaginative when it comes to sustainability. I'm sure all of these pictures are familiar to all of you working in climate. This is ChatGPT 4.0, and I asked it to paint a picture of the good life in 2030. So yeah, I don't think Cavan is going to look like this in 2030. But at the same time, we're seeing dystopian blockbusters, we're seeing Don't Look Up, we're seeing all of this stuff really captivate around the lives we don't want to be living, the lives we want to be avoiding. So how do we start thinking and painting desirable, irresistible pictures of what we do want? And so we started with the question, what do we really dream of? And we got asking people all across Ireland about their dreams, about what values they lived their lives by. And this is what happened. They told us overall that they felt more separate than they wanted to in their lives, and they wanted to move to feeling really interconnected, and connected through three spheres of one, more connected to themselves, to go from feeling like they were rushing around all the time to resting more, to feeling like their foundations, like housing, everything like that came up, were really shaky, to wanting secure freedom, to be able to thrive in their day-to-day lives. Secondly, connection to others, to being more connected in communities, to be more connected with people around the world, less polarization, all of the issues that John spoke about, and more connection to nature. And none of this was prompted in terms of sustainability or climate or anything like that. This is just what naturally came up when we asked people what they wanted from their lives. So I'm going to play you a couple of snippets now of citizens that we spoke to this time last year, talking about what kind of lives they wanted to be living.
Once you kind of start looking to the future, you kind of see that there are things that we should really be doing today that will help the next generation to come. The thing to remind myself of is make the most of it. Make sure that you're maximizing time.
Yeah, I think just a well-balanced life. I think balance is key for me between work, life, family, friends, all of that. I think that's the key to a good life.
I'll have to learn to enjoy life a bit better.
Obviously gets me excited, I suppose. There's so much possibilities. Why am I not doing all of these things,
You see there, what's coming out is once people start talking about the life they want to live, it opens up more possibilities in the present. It gets people to start thinking about how they're living their lives day to day. And these are just some of the sound bites about nature.
In terms of the environment, I suppose you just get a little bit worried, for the next generation. Like I have 2 adult children, and what's it going to be like for them in 10, 20 years' time? And certainly, if we don't have a planet to live on, we're all kind of goosed, so.
When the planet is better, you have a good life, you have a healthy, it's common sense,
Taking in the environment and nature of our beautiful island, the most amazing picnics, the most amazing scenery, environment, nature.
After we asked citizens across Ireland what their dreams were, we turned it into a creative brief, bringing it into the process of marketing and advertising. What do you do when you know what people's desires are? Try and tap into them. So we invited representatives from 10 competing marketing and advertising agencies in Ireland, so people we'd normally be battling against for clients, to come together in a workshop, and we inducted them into a new client, which was the future. And we presented them the challenge that people are aware and concerned about climate and nature, but we're not necessarily changing our lives in the ways that we need to. And the opportunity was around helping people get more excited. How do we do this? How do we talk about the lives that we could be living? And when we asked people in our research about advertising specifically, it was seen as a distraction. It was seen as something that was getting in the way of potentially living these visions of a good life that people had. And we're living in information era overload. And I guess the challenge with this is that we have such limited capacity with what we pay attention to. So we live in advertising and marketing in an economy of attention. We're always trying to demand attention and I guess stand out in a huge amount of noise. So we're pretty good at trying to get people to pay attention. That's what our business is. And what we found in the research was that when people redirected their attention towards this kind of area of dreaming and thinking about what lives they wanted to be living, it was hugely transformational. It wasn't just about, switching up one thing in their life. It was something that really touched people's values and gave them a mindset shift about many, many things in their lives. So nearly half the people that we spoke to changed something drastically in their life. One man even put his house up for sale after going through the research because he said, I want to be a really good father as much as I can, and I want a space for my kids to go out and play in a green area, and we currently don't have that. So this mindset shift potential with this redirected attention was something that we wanted to be able to really tap into. So the creative brief, and this is all the behind the scenes, like what happens before an ad appears on TV. The behind the scenes was to tell the creatives their challenge was to swap distraction with connection. So the distraction that normally is there with advertising that the citizens spoke to us about. How do we not take up people's time with things that they say don't matter to them, and actually start building this future filled with connection that people say they really want, and help people get there. So the idea that came out of this workshop with some of the most top creative directors in the country, some of the best strategists, copywriters, again, who'd be competing against each other normally, was Black Friday. So they picked, I guess, the time of the year where advertising is at its peak in terms of representing, I guess, all of the problems of capitalism and overconsumption. They said, what if we talked about Black Friday as advertisers and spinned it on its head? So in November 2024, last month, we launched a campaign around Black Friday. Christmas ad season is like the Oscars in marketing and advertising. It's where's the John Lewis ads? What are they saying this year? So we'll create a campaign that replaced these typical distractions with visionary nature-inspired interventions. So we wanted to lean into this nature connection desire that came out of the research and encourage people to think about the things they really want. So create something that wasn't a distraction, but an enabler for this type of connection that people desired. And I guess what came out of the workshop was this real desire to do more of this kind of work together, to get together. So we started creating our own Black Fridays in the run-up to the campaign to go outside in nature together. And the idea was that we were going to hand paint these visions for the future that were going to help people to think differently about their lives and do things as anti-advertising as we could. This was behind the scenes of the shoot out in nature in Wicklow. And I'm going to play you now a couple of the ads that we created. So it is a little bit funny showing an ad not in the context of the other ads that you'd normally see it in. So just imagine that before you've seen these ads, there may have been an ad for a hair straightener, or there may have been an ad for Tesco's, and then this pops up. And also, based on the fact that my dad and my boss is in the audience, I want you to give a round of applause after each ad, please. Because they're very quiet, nature-inspired pieces of work, and sometimes there's a little bit of a gap between each one. So a little bit of a woo after each ad, please, would be lovely. So yeah, we chose the tagline, let's advertise a better life, to be a rising call to action, and also to kind of help explain what this was for to people as well, because they might think it was a personal ad, just seeing a sheet on a line. Here's another one. That one was actually in cinemas. If you went to see Gladiator or Wicked in the last few weeks, if you were on time, you might have seen this one. And the next one I'm going to play for you, the last one, is the radio ad. So imagine you're driving your EV or having a dance in the kitchen in the morning, and you've heard ads again for Tesco's or BP maybe this time, and this comes on.
This was going to be an ad for something you might not need. A little bird told us that you might prefer this. Let's advertise a better life. Find out more at goodlife2030.earth.
Okay. Forgot about the rules. Yes. Okay, the quiz hasn't started yet, but does anyone know whose voice that was? No? Sean Renan, well done. Birdsong, anyone seen Birdsong? Biggest ornithologist in the country. He gave us all the birdsong and beautiful nature sounds to use in the ads. So a big shout out to Sean, who's absolutely brilliant at getting people connected to nature. So this was in Dundrum Shopping Centre, less office blues, more scenic views. And I should say that the people who created the paintings were encouraged to kind of think of their own visions as to what they wanted less or more of in the future. This is Grafton Street. Here are some lovely Black Friday sale ads with our less shopping sprees, more native trees on the back of the Sunday Times. And then this was the Irish Times the other day that had a great media placement we didn't plan, that had less buying, more being on one side, and on the other side an SUV ad. So just really showing the less harm, more good, please, tension in the industry right now. And this is just some of the conversation that has happened on the back of this work, because it's not just about the ads that go out, but it's actually talking about what they mean and what they're bringing up for people, and how is the industry looking at itself in a new way. So yeah, I think, the 10 agencies collaborating was a brilliant one, but just even the cynical ones I loved, like, can we really do this? Can advertising that has been built on doing one certain job, can it really transition and be a lever that's so powerful in one way to do it the other way? I think is such a valuable question that we're gonna keep having. But yeah, I think the less is more for living a good life is just to see that in a tabloid was absolutely amazing. So as Mary Robinson, who I met here in 2018 at the Climate Cocktail Club, and now I'm on the stage after a few years later, so very excited about that. But she said this at the DCU Centre for Climate and Society conference earlier this year, and I scribbled it down to use it in every presentation, because we need to get excited about the future that's just around the corner. We need a more imagined future. We need to talk more about where we want to be. So my final favour is to scan the QR code and go on our Good Life website. If you can't scan it, if it doesn't work, go to goodlife2030.earth. And I'd love you to input a vision for the future. So if you scroll down, there's a little button towards the end of the page that says submit your vision. And it's just very simple. What would you like less or more of? And we'd love to do something with them at some point. So we're on a mission to gather as much as we can. So if you know anybody else who might have a dream for the future rather than a nightmare, please direct them towards the website. And that's it.
Thanks a mil, Laura. That was better than that. Another round of applause for Laura. Come on. So we're just going to have a little chit chat, and then it's open to questions from the audience as well.
And
so
if you haven't finished your vision yet, keep going.
yeah, keep imagining it.
Yeah.
So a question for me, and then one kind of planet as well. So this Climate Cocktail Club, it's all about connection. So we've got connection through entertainment, connection through science, and connection through advertising and reimagining. I want to hear more about the journeys that the marketing and advertising people went on. So you spoke about the people that participated, and we heard some of them, but what was it like for your colleagues and for your competitors who went through that journey too? Was it taken seriously? Was it not? Did it change them? Did it not? Like, what was the conflict like?
I think one of my favorite moments was, so we did, when you get a new client in the industry, you have an induction. So if you have a coffee brand, you're brought out, you taste the coffee, you ooh and ah, and you're going to be able to do really effective advertising after that. So we brought all of these people to Emma, who kindly gave us a room to use. And then we inducted them into their client the future by telling them to go and walk around in nature. And then they had to come back and write a haiku about what they had seen in nature. And one guy put his hand up and he spoke about watching two snails making love in the garden.
Slimy.
Yeah, and it was just this moment where everybody kind of gave each other permission to laugh and have fun with it. But also, I guess, started to work together as a team, right? Like, you start to get to know people and reveal you're human and reveal those like quirky characteristics that you have. And everybody was so grateful to be able to finally work with that creative director that they've always been envious of their work. So at the end of the day, it was a real joy to have people that not only you had such empathy for in terms of their day-to-day, in terms of what their challenges were, the kinds of demands that would have been at them, but also this kind of shared concern because all of these people volunteered their time to come. So they were obviously in some way interested in being part of a mysterious kind of new experiment in terms of doing something different. So that was really special.
I just have the image of two snails there.
Yeah, sorry.
A little bit shell-shocked. I was holding on to that one. But that, I mean, John mentioned that too, though. So but from a different angle, almost a reverse angle. So to open up conversations about these issue areas, to talk about the common ground. But in this instance, this was the common ground that brought people together from different backgrounds. Were there any commitments that were made by the agencies? Because one thing that we find in conversations with clients is, can you set a restriction on who you work with or what you do? And they become then rules of the game. Was that discussed? Is that going to be something that's explored? I mean, how hard is it?
Yeah, that's like the do less harm part, right? So this specific project that I spoke about was the kind of, how do we get people excited using their creativity? But also within that, there's revealed attention. I remember there was one Zoom call we had, and we had showcased the work that had just been produced. So, not every creative director or strategist was at the shoot. So we showed them the work that had been created. They're like, this is amazing, it's beautiful, it's going to stand out so much. And I'm going to go back and sell more shit. I'm going to go back to the day job. And that tension really revealed itself every single time we got together. It was, I've got all of these other challenges going on, and you're living in these two different realities, really, when you're working on something like this. Not as acute for everyone as it is for others, but alongside this work, we also did a leaders roundtable. So we brought together CEOs of some of the biggest and most talented agencies in the country and got them to talk about what can leaders do. And that's where the conversation came up around leaders have the power to be able to say yes or no to clients. And that is a moral and economic kind of process of going about in terms of how you get there. But that conversation is being had. It's probably being had not necessarily as common practice, but as experimental or best practice, or when people are trying to take the conversations further, that's where it goes. Because it is kind of the elephant in the room, in that if you're working for very high carbon clients, that's going to outweigh the positive impact that you might be having with some very small NGOs and things like that.
Yeah, and if I got super nerdy on you, we consider this like a downstream impact. So it's the downstream impact of a service or activity. So for anyone that's super, super, super nerdy, in Microsoft, through their AI and technology platform, they enable oil and gas companies to extract more fossil fuels, but those aren't accounted for in Microsoft's footprint as an organization. So some employees took that concept and went to the shareholder meeting, the AGM, and put it as an action to be voted on. But it was that issue of enabling an environment, enabling the SUVs, enabling the consumerism, and where that boundary could or should be drawn. But I guess there are pure play agencies that don't work in that way.
Yeah,
that would exist if that was a choice for someone anyway.
Yeah, so Thinkhouse, for example, we've signed a Clean Creatives pledge. There's a great movement called Clean Creatives. I think there's about 11 agencies in Ireland that have signed it to not work on fossil fuel accounts. But it's quite different in Ireland because we don't necessarily have the Shells and BPs having really big advertising campaigns here. It is those fossil fuel, I guess, services or products that are also an issue. So, I mean, you see restrictions coming down the line.
The Dairy Council.
Yeah, restrictions are coming down the line for sure, I'd say, on stuff like, you look at Edinburgh and France, and they've started restricting advertising. So, I mean, we've done it for tobacco. I think it's inevitable that at some point there will be restrictions for high carbon. There was a bill in government two bills in government last year looking at car advertising and things like that. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, look, we'll leave it there so we keep on track. Thanks again, everyone, to Laura.